You know it is the NFL offseason for certain NFL teams when there are certain storylines circling around the state circles, and conversations are being had about Kirk Cousins over and over and over again. His team released or leaked statements about Kirk throwing before the combine to try to make him marketable and attractive to other NFL teams. And now there's this buzz. That's an off-season buzzword, right? Buzz. There's this buzz. There's this inkling. There's this feeling that it will take $90 million guaranteed, $45 million a year for 2 years to sign free agent quarterback Kirk Cousins. So the question is Kirk Cousins going to take that money? Is this report real? And if it is real, is Kirk Cousins going to leave the Minnesota Vikings? Now, I feel like at this point in the offseason for the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins and his team are basically filming an infomercial for him. For the Big Mac on television at McDonald's. You see this Big Mac ad on television, and it's way, way bigger than it normally is when you order a Big Mac at McDonald's. It looks juicy. It looks tender. It looks like something made at an elite restaurant. And then you get to the McDonald's and you realize it's high school, college kids making this Big Mac. They slab the cheese on there. They slab the juices on there. And it tastes like a Big Mac. It still tastes pretty good. But it doesn't taste as satisfying as it looks on television. And Kirk Cousins, they're creating an infomercial for him. It's going to be just a matter of time before a report comes out that Kirk Cousins is throwing harder and longer than he's ever done before in his entire career. I guarantee you that's going to come out eventually. Because it's off-season speculation time. It's fun to say things, even if they're not true. It's fun to report these things or leak this information to get teams to bite. And here's the deal. There are teams around the league, like the Atlanta Falcons, that feel like they're just a quarterback away from being an elite NFL team, especially in the division that they're in. And they're thinking to themselves, if we could just get Kirk Cousins, then we are a Super Bowl team with a Super Bowl roster. I mean, just look at the NFC. The Detroit Lions almost made it into the Super Bowl. The San Francisco 49ers, it took a miraculous comeback because of a bunch of Lions heirs to get to the Super Bowl. Now is the time for a team like the Atlanta Falcons to come calling on Kirk Cousins. And this is what Kirk Cousins and his team are doing. They're throwing numbers out there. They're leaking information. They're trying to get teams to bite. And I am more convinced right now than ever before that Kirk Cousins is going to leave the Minnesota Vikings and join a different team. Because as I've said before, this is his last chance at winning a Super Bowl in the NFL. And his number one priority is winning. So, why would you join the Minnesota Vikings? And if you're really asking for a $45 million asking price per year, why would the Minnesota Vikings bend over, give up everything, just to resign the quarterback that they had? Kirk Cousins has one playoff win in his entire career, and that came with the Minnesota Vikings. It was a special game against the New Orleans Saints on the road. A beautiful touchdown pass on 3rd and goal to Kyle Rudolph when the Vikings needed it most. In overtime, nonetheless. Tim Tebow has one career playoff win. His miraculous throw to Demaryius Thomas, R.I.P., against the Pittsburgh Steelers. One of the best defenses in the league at that moment. Those are just facts. If that hurts your feelings, then I don't know what to tell you. But Kirk, Atlanta, maybe the Raiders, Devontae Adams had really nice things to say about Kirk, but $45 million per year, I do believe a team would pay that for Kirk Cousins because they will convince themselves, and hey, if I was that team, I would probably convince myself too, that they are a Kirk Cousins away from being a Super Bowl contender. I think about like Carson Palmer in this situation, or Kurt Warner. They had one final good run in them, both with the Arizona Cardinals. Kurt Warner made it to a Super Bowl, lost in the Super Bowl when he was like 40 years old. He had one last good run in him with the Cardinals. Carson Palmer, Bruce Arians, they teamed up in Arizona. They had an unbelievable season in 2014, 2015. It was his last run. And I think that's how Kirk Cousins views this. This is his last run. And back to the infomercial. These teams are going to convince themselves that they need Kirk Cousins because it's either Kirk Cousins, Desmond Ridder, Taylor Heineke, or Justin Fields. Who would you rather have out of those list of quarterbacks? It's not even close. The answer is obvious. And I believe that a team would come calling for Captain Kirk, number 8. Because he allows them to reach a success that they have not ever reached before. Or maybe haven't ever reached in a long time. And as I've said before, it makes sense for the Vikings and Kirk Cousins to mutually part ways at this point, both in the Vikings organization and in Kirk Cousins' career. And plus, Kirk Cousins' wife's family also lives in Atlanta. This could be a way of giving back to his wife in a certain way. It matters. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please rate, review, and follow this podcast wherever you are currently listening to this podcast. Everyone, take care and have a great day.